Hi, and welcome. Today I'm going to talk a bit about stock photography. Now, I think that most photographers know what that is. If you don't, there's a pretty good article on Wikipedia about it, give you the history and so on. As I mentioned in a previous video, I worked in the mid-90s for a time as a photo researcher for a stock photo library in Chicago. And this library specialized in medical and scientific imagery. They had a studio, they had professional lighting. I learned how to use that lighting. And I built my own stock portfolio of kind of health-related and sometimes scientific images. And I've been shooting stock photography ever since. I traveled extensively after that and built a travel portfolio. Now, that library is no longer in existence, but I do owe them a debt of gratitude because I've been able to use the lighting skills throughout my photography career. But that's also what got me going on stock photography. And I've always made enough money to continue submitting stock images. And I should say that up until recently. Things have been changing over the years. My income has kind of flatlined from stock photography, although my sales volume, number of images per year, has steadily increased. And I will say that my average per image sale price is probably higher than a lot of people that I see on forums talking about how much they're making. But things have changed. In the 90s, when I worked as a photo researcher, the split in general was 50-50. The agency library took 50% for their part, marketing, paying people like me to do photo research and enter keywords into their database, and the photographer did their part by buying film, developing it after they've shot it, taking that stock photography was generally done with transparencies. So although you didn't have to enter keywords, you did have to label the slides. And there was software that you could print sheets of labels and then imagine sitting with a stack of sheets like this, a stack of slides, a stack of sheets of labels, and peeling off all those labels and labeling the slides and making sure that you got the right label on the right slide and so on. So I should show you how what one of these images looks like, and you'll laugh when you find out how I did it, because I just used one of those little Ulanzi LED lights to light the slide, and use one of my cameras with a kit lens to photograph it. So today, that labor split, there's, in my opinion, more on the photographer because you have to be typing in the keywords. Some agencies will keyword your images, but you have to edit those. You have to make sure those keywords are appropriate, add and delete as needed. So you're still doing that kind of work. And they have put the research part of it off on the customer. Because if you're looking for an image these days, you have to go to the website of that whatever agency and type in a search to find your images. Now, there are agencies that still have people who will help you with that. There's no question about that. But in my opinion, there is no reason why photographers should accept anything less than 50% of the license fee. Prices keep falling, and these companies keep making more money if you look at the history. Now, notice that I tend to use the word library when referring to these companies rather than the word agency. And the reason I do that is because The word agency implies an agency relationship. In an agency relationship, there is a fiduciary responsibility on the part of the agent to work in your best interest. In other words, if these companies were in actuality agencies, they'd be working in your best interest. And the most common example of this type of relationship is when you buy or sell a house. You have a realtor in general, unless you're selling on your own. You use a realtor, and that realtor has a fiduciary responsibility to act in your best interest, whether you're buying or selling. Not in their best interest, in your best interest. Stock companies, stock photo companies are under no such obligation, and they don't act in your best interest. They have continually decreased commissions. They have continually lowered prices. All the while, they make more money because it's a volume thing. Now, part of that is on us, the photographers, because we have let them do it. And we have continued to supply them with images. And so there is a glut of images. And it's supply and demand. However, the agency that I use, when I signed on with them in the mid-2000s, paid a 60% commission. I'm not even sure if that's the right word. But you got 60% of the gross license fee. And to me, that was pretty fair. More than fair. Eventually that dropped to 50%. Okay, that's where it was most of the time previously. Then it dropped to 40% unless you exclusively had your images with them. Okay, most of my images were with them, so I marked my images exclusive, and I went through my other agencies and deleted images, and images on my SmugMug site that were available and my Fine Art America site that were available for stock licensing, I changed so that they were not. Now, this agency is implementing a new structure. And exclusivity, for the most part, doesn't matter. Whether or not your image is exclusively with them, if you don't sell $25,000 in gross license fees per year, you get 40%. Now, most photographers who are doing stock are not selling $25,000 a year. I make several $1,000s a year, but I don't have gross license fees of $25,000 a year. Additionally, they're lowering the commission to 20% for people who do not sell more than $250 a year, and I get that. If you're selling stock photography for more than a year or two, and you're not having total sales, gross sales of over $250, you probably need to rethink what you're doing. And maybe that's something for me to touch on in another video. Stock photography is not about pretty pictures. It's not about shooting what you like. Sometimes it is. Most of the time it's about shooting what's going to sell. And what's going to sell isn't always what you like shooting. It's as simple as that. So what to do about this? Or where to go? There are other ways of selling your stock photography. And today with the internet, I am not convinced that doing it on your own is something that's impossible. You've got places like SmugMug, which is where I have a site that I use for client images. But you can sell royalty-free stock on SmugMug, and you get 85% of the markup over their very low base price for that. You do have to have a pro account, which is several $100s a year, but if you're a professional photographer and you're using that for fulfillment of images to your customers, you need to have a pro account. My understanding is some of the other sites like SmugMug also have that feature. So my advice to anyone who is considering selling stock imagery is think long and hard before getting into a relationship with one of these stock photo companies, because they're not our friends. And really, frankly, photographers sometimes are their own worst enemies. Most photographers are terrible business people. They'll say yes when they should say no. And so think long and hard about what you're doing. You know, if you're a pro and you do lifestyle shoots and you're producing top-notch work, model released, there's always going to be a market for that. And so you might find that a specific agency, given whatever the terms are, might work for you. But then if you're a top-notch pro, you have your own website and you have the ability to market yourself. And if you're making money doing it, you probably are a pretty good business person. So you probably do know how to market and you do know how to network, because there are companies all around you, wherever you live, that need imagery. And they may want to come to somebody local rather than going to a big agency. Well, I think that's enough for today. You know, if you want to see a further video about shooting stock and images that have sold as stock of mine, let me know in the comments. I'll do that. And if you liked this video, please like it, subscribe. It helps me. One more thing. I'm going to put a link down in the description for a site called Selling Stock. It's selling-stock.com. And it's a site run by Jim Pickerel, Jim is in his 80s. I don't know him personally, but he has been involved in the stock industry as an advisor since I got into it. And he has a lot of things to say about it, and it's really, really helpful to people who are thinking about going into it. So I would really advise you, if you're thinking about selling stock, go to selling-stock.com and read those articles, because it may save you a lot of time and a lot of disappointment. Thanks again. Again, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.